I can't tell you how many hospital shows I've seen with shafts of light coming through the windows and they're full of smoke, you know? It's like, really? In the hospital? Okay. Hi, my name's Marshall Adams, ASC, and I have shot such shows as CSI New York, El Camino, Better Call Saul, and I'm a cinematographer. I grew up actually in Southern California, although, you know, kind of off the beaten path in Topanga Canyon. My dad actually had a flatbed 8mm editing deck that came like in a little tiny briefcase, and he had an 8mm film camera. And I was shooting films with it, and my dad had designed a house a few years earlier that David Chase bought, who ended up doing The Sopranos. David became pretty good friends, and he found out I was making films, and so he wanted me to come down and check out his new project called The Rockford Files.
You can't be that stupid. Oh, sure I can. I've been doing stupid things all day.
So that got me, hooked on the business, and I was kind of singly focused after that. So I actually moved up on a TV series called Felicity. I started on Felicity as the Gaffer. I did the first 3 seasons, ended up with Michael Bonvillain was the cinematographer, and Michael was pushing for me to shoot some of their second unit stuff. And then miraculously, I got a call for another little after-school special that got me my card, got me into Local 600 as a cinematographer, and then I went back to Felicity season 4 as the DP. So yeah, I mean, it was a process. Peter and Vince, the very first time, after they called and they offered me the show, I went out to lunch with them, and they wanted to talk to me about Saul and where we were going, and they basically said at this lunch that they wanted me to take risks. They would rather me go too far and end up having to go back and reshoot something than feel like I left anything on the table. And it was something I'd never heard from a producer in my life. So yeah, I was like, wow, this is different. This is really different. It was big shoes to fill. They had really gone a different direction visually. Breaking Bad was a handheld show. It was full of energy, especially near the end. It was always go, go, go. Saul was very planted and very deliberate. So that I fell in love with immediately. Saul ended up kind of being a cross between some of my ideas and a lot of Peter and Vince influence. They've, of course, influenced my style too. It's all got to be based in a story. It's all got to be story-driven. I would say most of the interior lights are all LED. We use big tungsten sources for some of the night stuff occasionally. Interior on stage and on location, it's almost exclusively LEDs, whether it be tubes, panels. I mean, I remember the old days when we used to use chimeras on an old 2K, with a Fresnel, which couldn't be a worse light to try to put through a chimera. Before we started on season 6, I saw this review that somebody had posted somewhere about the Aputure lights. So I sent a text message to Waylon Brady. Waylon's the best boy electric. I said, you guys got to check these out. So come to find out when I arrived there that they had bought all kinds of Aputure gear even before I got there, even before I met anybody at Aputure. So there was already a bunch of the gear on the show, coincidentally. The fact that they're so compact and they're already soft coming out that you get all of that room back is such a big thing. There's one light that I use almost all the time, and people will see it if they watch some of my stuff. It's a little ping in the eye. I'm a firm believer having lit faces, and it took me years to figure out how to do it. When the 12-inch LED panels came out with the 30-degree grids, with the really narrow grids, I could throw a little bit of light in that was sharp enough to give you a twinkle in somebody's eye without actually adding any more light to their face. That's one of my go-to lights that I use all the time.
What?
All right. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
So now we're going to run you through some of the lighting setups and some of the stills from Better Call Saul. So this is within the RV. His head is inside of a mesh bag that he can barely see through, and he's trying to get glimpses of what he's seeing. The RV they actually still had, if you can believe it, these are set pieces, which is oversized from what the actual RV is. But there was a big skylight that Mike Slovis had put in directly above it, so during the day you could get some fill in, and at night a little bit. So I've got 200-300 Novas directly above there. This was basically all lit from the practicals, heavily frosted, mostly straight incandescent, not even really LEDs yet. The Gaffer had some issues with some early on, so he refuses to use them. One of the things that we use a lot of is a whole bunch of little single LEDs on stands outside that window, basically as twinkle lights, as city lights off in the distance, that as we move around, you can see kind of in between the mesh of the blind, so it feels like, you know, we're driving away from the city. They're literally single diodes that we put gels in front of and change the colors of, so they're a mixture of sodium and mercury vapor, and occasionally a white one too.
Come on, just tell me what you want. Jesus. Oh, no, 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 no.
We got a number of still frames from the first scene, which was shot, God, it must have been 10 years earlier, on 35 mil. So we wanted a lot of examples of the color so we could make sure we were able to kind of dial it in to match pretty much exactly what was there originally. So that was important because the color was such a predominant character in that particular scene, in Saul's first scene out there in the desert, that I wanted to make sure that we could make it right.
Jeez. Oh! Oh, no, 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 no! No! It wasn't me! It was Ignacio! He's the one!
This particular shot, we actually had an aperture light bouncing off a 12 by to give us the blue. From this side over here, there was a 12 by back in here somewhere. And then these two lights that you can see, the two pools on either side of them were the headlights of the RV there. And there were two par cans. So the par cans they're down on preemie stands. I want to say they're just even like 2 feet off the ground, kind of trying to get all of those shadows so that they would pop, and also to give us the shadow detail, which really kind of accentuated the dirt and the edge of the hole and stuff like that. This is actually the other way around, but weirdly, there's a dirt road that travels kind of back behind camera here that goes around. It's raised about 6 or 8 feet, and we had a 60-foot scissor lift on it. That is a Nova 300. Is what's on, I'm sure what's in that lift over there. So yeah, this is all done with aperture lights, except for the headlights. When we were seeing the RV, were the real headlights that we'd swapped out for the brightest ones we could find, and then when we were facing away from it, we used our par cans. Saul has just pulled up in the cab, so we've got this night exterior establishing shot. The taxi pulls up, he gets out, and then he goes around and he kind of breaks through the glass and enters the house through the back door. We had Nova 600 on the corner over here, and then there was another Condor back here. First off, it was cold. It was a Friday night. We were starting at 6 o'clock at night, and we were shooting our 2 scenes, and then we were handing it off to Vince and episode 12, which starts in this exact same location, and they stayed for a couple of days. But so they had a big long night ahead of them, so they were in a hurry to get us out of there. So we're looking towards that corner. That's the scissor lift back here, and it's coming straight into the windshield there. I put some diffusion over the window of the taxi on the passenger side right there, and filtered it with a Nova 300. We use a combination full grid, 250, 216, and Opal. You can see the twinkle in his eye right there. That's what I was trying to get for that look. I'm a firm believer that if you can get away with a lot less light if you have just a twinkle in somebody's eye, if you can just see some life in there. So that's a big one for me. The key that's doing all the work here that's coming through the window and edging him back here. Actually, I put duvetine on the back side here, on the back side of that wall, and on this edge of the door and above it here, to keep from reflecting that Nova 600 back that was on a 60-foot Condor back in that corner there, so that it wasn't overfilling him, because I noticed that we had a lot of bounce back. So that was a big thing. Basically, this is a one light. Other than the little specials that we've got on the plants back there, this is a one light setup. Again, this is one of those silly finds that we got out there, and I looked at the rehearsal and I realized that there was this wall right here. It continues around the backyard, and it was creating this cut, but it wasn't quite high enough. So I actually brought it in to sharpen it. It's actually it's a 16-foot duvetine teaser on stands that's just off camera over here. That's creating that sharp edge right there. I had to bring it in nice and sharp, because you can see that the lower one is a lot sharper than the higher one, which is actually happening from the real roof. That same Nova 600 on a 60-foot Condor back there, or an 80-foot Condor. We just decided to shape it as much as we could. Also, I think we have a double net because it was getting a little bright in the foreground there. This is all just one light. Okay, so this is Gene's apartment. The apartment was established back in season 1 of Better Call Saul. Peter wanted to do this shot that was back looking over the, this is a police scanner radio right here. So he's listening to hear if the police are coming to get him or they're, how close they're getting. We wanted to have daylight coming in from back through these windows. So this window, I wanted basically something fairly soft in this window that wasn't very bright. And then this side window over here, I wanted it a lot hotter. So we were able to sneak a 1200 right back there, just literally out of frame. I think it has a 18 by 24 216 frame in it, cutting it off of this window to keep it soft, and then wide open on that back window there, keying. There's literally no other light that would have done this job. It wouldn't have been possible. An HMI PAR would have been too sourcey, you could never have gotten the light in, and not to mention the diffusion wouldn't have survived. He's in an absolute panic, and I wanted it to be messy in here. You can see that practical is kind of edging him from that side, and he had this other, there was the 1200 that was coming in through that window, what was giving him the edge. It was just about that moment. It's kind of dirty and messy, and the scene is messy. He's trying to grab as much stuff as he can to run from the police, so it fit for the scene. I wanted it to be in, the front of his face to be in shadow there. I think I might have a little eye twinkle in him just so that I could see his eyes, but it's hard to tell from the still. But yeah, no, it was very intentionally, keyed from the two sides, which you can see it was natural to the situation. It wasn't anything I specifically was trying to do, but it matched what, and it felt right for the scene. So that's why I did it, yeah. So when I read this script and it had a call for this prison transport bus, it just absolutely made sense to me. There was no other way to shoot this than to shoot it on a big LED screen. So we built this LED screen, but I also wanted to have the sun playing in from one side or the other. We actually matched the shots of the bus that they shot a week earlier of it traveling down the road with the sun on the left side as it was traveling. So we hung two 20Ks. We only used one at a time, obviously. It just depended on the location. Up on truss, way up above the LED screen here, hanging out underneath. And we had an operator on a scissor lift right next to it that could slide it 6 or 8 feet in either direction, or even push it forward or back, because it was hanging from the perms. So it had a little bit of forward and back movement, just to give the sun some feeling of movement. The whole bus was on airbags, so they could rock it back and forth and move it up and down and give it, so everybody moved at the same times. The chains all moved correctly and stuff like that, which is, they spared no expense on that show. And then on the other side, we were filling in with a couple of Novas through diffusion frames all the way down the side of the bus here. I think we started out with 2 12-bys or 3 12-bys with the Nova 600 and a couple of the Nova 300s as on the fill side there, and then we walked them in. Eventually ended up with diffusion directly on the side of the bus. But so yeah, this was a big endeavor. There was a lot of talk about why we went to LED screen, and even the producer at one point was like, well, it's way too expensive, this big LED system. Can we shoot this on the road? And I said, no, there's just no way we can do this safely, and everybody's going to get motion sickness. And I can only imagine like the operators trying to move down this bus as we're going down a mountain road. It just wasn't possible. So, and he understood and was, smart about it. But yeah. One of the things that we're spoiled with on Better Call Saul that I really discovered with them is they are the nicest, most supportive people I've ever come across in my entire career. They enable everybody in every department to do their best work, to bring their best ideas, and was such a treat. I hope I can bring that to other sets along my path, because it's really such a key to the success of that show, I think, is their ability to kind of empower everybody to bring their best game. The only advice I can give you is to do what you like. Follow your passion, follow your heart. The moment you try to emulate somebody else's work is the moment that you become a bad facsimile of them. Do what you like, and people will enjoy it. So, follow your heart, and that's the easiest way to getting to stuff that you're proud of.